Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a truly fascinating stack of sources that bypass the noise of the news cycle and focus on something fundamental: the hidden history and precise mechanisms behind our global comfort foods.
It's an exceptionally rich set of materials. We're dealing with a dual mandate here, I think. You've got this deep cultural narrative, like the historical resilience you see in a 19th century American state dessert.
Right.
And then that's perfectly balanced with, well, intensely practical, really step-by-step instructional knowledge. We're talking dishes across the globe, regional fusion, classic steamed buns, even 5 different kinds of poutine.
Yeah, the detail is incredible. So our mission is clear. This isn't just a summary of what sounds tasty.
Yeah.
We are here to extract the exact facts, the historical threads, and the essential technical knowledge.
The nitty-gritty.
Exactly, the temperatures, the ratios, the whys behind these culinary traditions. When you finish this deep dive, you should really have the cultural context and the detail, instructional knowledge to understand exactly how and why these foods exist.
Precisely. We're framing this analysis not just as cooking, although there's plenty of that, but as a study in tradition, necessity, and innovative technique across incredibly diverse fields. We're going from the remote Chesapeake Bay all the way to bustling street stalls in China and Canada.
Quite a journey. Let's dive right in.
Sure.
Okay, let's start with a true American gem and really a piece of edible history. The Smith Island cake. This is the official state dessert of Maryland. Now, if you haven't encountered one, its defining characteristic is its architecture. It's an exceptionally tall cake.
It really stands out.
Built from typically 10, sometimes you see 9, but usually 10, extremely thin, meticulously layered sheets of cake, each one spread with this rich frosting.
And the history baked into this is, I think, what's truly compelling. The origins date back quite a ways to the 1800s on the remote, pretty small community of Smith Island, which sits out in the Chesapeake Bay.
Very isolated.
Very. And life there was, well, it was dominated by the sea. We're talking oystering, crabbing. The men, the watermen, they'd often be away from home for extended periods, on these long expeditions out on the bay or even further.
Right, so the tradition of the cake itself seems to have developed out of this mix of love, maybe celebration when they return, but crucially, sheer necessity.
That's it. It was the wives baking these for their husbands to take with them on these lengthy sea voyages.
And that practicality piece is fascinating.
That's the key insight, I think. What's fascinating here is that the structural design, those multiple super thin layers, it wasn't just for show. It was fundamentally practical.
Right?
Think about the environment back then. You've got the sea air, which is damp and salty, and certainly no modern refrigeration out on those boats.
Definitely not.
So by stacking 10 thin layers and spreading that chocolate fudge frosting meticulously between each one, they were essentially creating a highly preserved, almost sealed cake.
Like waterproofing it with frosting?
Kind of, yeah. The rich, fatty frosting, and it's a rich fudge frosting, it served as a protective barrier. It kept the cake fresh, moist, and delicious for much longer than, say, a standard 2-layer cake could ever manage in that kind of harsh, isolated environment.
It's really a genius piece of functional design when you think about it that way.
Absolutely.
It ensured that the watermen had the sustained peace of home, a bit of comfort and celebration, even if they were weeks away from shore. And we know the ingredients themselves are pretty classic Americana, right? Flour, sugar, eggs, butter.
Standard pantry staples.
But the success hinges entirely on the technique. It's all in the execution.
Absolutely. The art of creating these layers. It's a real test of a baker's discipline and patience. You're aiming for perfect uniform thickness in the batter before you even bake it. Each layer has to be incredibly thin.
How thin are we talking?
Well, the sources describe the final baked layer as being so delicate that it's barely kissed by the heat. That phrasing really captures it.
Wow.
This intentional underbaking, or maybe just a very light touch with the heat, it's critical. Because when you stack 10 of these delicate things, you want a very tender crumb that almost melds with the frosting. You don't want a dense, dry structure, which you might get if each layer was baked hard.
Right. It needs to become one cohesive whole, almost.
Exactly. It needs to slice cleanly and eat almost like a single entity, despite the 10 distinct layers.
Okay, so if the layers are the foundation, then that chocolate fudge frosting.
Well, it sounds like it's the entire infrastructure holding it all together.
It absolutely is. It's not just a topping, it's structural and preservative. It's definitely not a light, fluffy buttercream you might picture on a birthday cake. It needs to stand up to the weight of the tradition, literally and figuratively, and the layers themselves.
So what makes this fudge frosting special? Is it just a standard fudge? Well, the sources describe it as a rich, intense, decadent dream. So probably a step above standard. It has a true fudge consistency. The technique involves melting chocolate, good quality chocolate, presumably sugar, butter, and milk. And then the crucial part, cooking this mixture slowly.
Low and slow.
Exactly. This slow, low-heat cooking process is what allows the sugar to dissolve completely, preventing grittiness, and lets the chocolate flavor deepen and mature. It develops this really profound richness. The result is a smooth, silky, but quite dense icing. It's the perfect complement in terms of flavor, but it's also that essential structural element needed for those delicate cake layers.
It sounds like a remarkable amount of effort and commitment goes into each cake. When you consider the isolation of Smith Island and the economic challenges the community has faced over the decades, well, maintaining this specific labor-intensive baking tradition becomes truly symbolic, doesn't it?
It really does. It is a profound symbol of resilience, I think. The cake represented stability, community connection, and the enduring spirit of the Smith Island people. This is a community that's faced significant economic downturns, particularly with the changes in the oyster and crab industries, and now, increasingly, the very real threats of coastal erosion and natural disasters due to climate change.
Yeah, the island itself is literally disappearing.
Right. And amidst all that uncertainty, the cake remained a constant. It linked generations together through this shared, sweet ritual. It's something tangible that represents their unique culture and persistence.
That deep cultural legacy was officially recognized, wasn't it?
Yes, in 1985, it was, quite deservedly, designated as Maryland's official state dessert. It cemented its place in history.
And it's interesting, while the original chocolate fudge design is clearly the gold standard, the tradition isn't completely static.
That's true. The sources note that modern bakeries, both on the island and off, have adapted. They've introduced innovative flavors, things like lemon, coconut, banana, red velvet, playing with different fillings and frostings.
But they keep the structure.
Crucially, yes, they always respect and honor that original, multi-layered, thin structure. The technique itself is the tradition. The 10 thin layers are non-negotiable.
So the technique is the narrative.
Beautifully put. If you lose the 10 layers, you essentially lose the history. You lose the story of the watermen needing that durability at sea, the story of the community's resilience. It just becomes another layer cake.
Fascinating start. That connection between function, history, and technique is really powerful.
Okay, that was a beautiful historical thread. Now let's pivot. We're moving from that historical American masterpiece to something more about fundamental techniques found in fried doughs, really, across global street foods. Let's start with something familiar to many. The funnel cake. Right, funnel cake, a staple of fairs and amusement parks. Here, we need to focus on the principles of the batter itself. The technique requires a batter that's, well, it's got to be thin enough to flow easily through the spout of a funnel.
Hence the name.
Exactly. But critically, it also needs to be thick enough to hold its shape pretty much instantly when it hits that hot oil. It can't just dissipate.
Okay, so walk us through the core components. The sources mention whisking dry ingredients first.
Yes, the core dry ingredients, all-purpose flour, granulated sugar, baking powder, and a little salt for balance, are whisked together first. This ensures even distribution, especially of the leavening agent.
And that baking powder is key here, right? For that instant puffiness.
Absolutely essential. The critical factor in this rapid frying technique is the amount of baking powder. It provides the lift, ensuring that the batter immediately puffs up when it hits the intense heat, giving the funnel cake that characteristic light, almost lacy texture, despite being fried.
Okay, dry ingredients combined. Then the wet.
Then you combine that with the wet ingredients, typically milk, eggs for richness and binding, and vanilla extract for flavor. The key principle, according to the sources, is gradually combining the wet ingredients into the dry.
Slowly does it.
You add the wet mixture slowly, whisking continuously until the batter is smooth. You absolutely want to avoid lumps, because any lumps would clog the funnel and ruin the whole process. The final consistency should be something like maybe a very thick, pourable pancake batter. Thicker than crepe batter, for sure.
Got it. Now, the frying itself, temperature seems paramount here.
Oh, absolutely. The specific heat is where the instructional knowledge becomes crucial. For that perfect crisp exterior, that golden brown color, without excessive oil absorption, nobody wants a greasy funnel cake.
The frying temperature must be precisely $375 circa OFI.
which is $190 circ.
Right, 192 third. That precise temperature threshold is really non-negotiable. If it's too low, the batter absorbs too much oil before it cooks. Too high, and the outside burns before the inside is cooked through.
Okay, oil's a temp. Now, the actual funnel technique. So once the oil is ready, the technique involves pouring the prepared batter directly into a funnel, a literal funnel, usually with a finger closing the bottom hole initially. Then you position the funnel over the hot oil, holding it very close to the surface.
Close to the surface, why is that important?
Holding it close prevents the batter from splashing dangerously, and it also helps the pattern start immediately and controllably. You then release your finger and move the funnel in a careful, continuous circular motion. You overlap the lines of batter as you pour.
Creating that signature swirl.
Exactly, that interlocking spiral pattern. Because the oil is so hot and the batter strands are thin, the fry time is incredibly rapid. We're talking only 2 to 3 minutes per side. You flip it carefully once until that signature golden brown color is achieved on both sides.
Quick and dramatic. Okay, our sources detail 3 popular variations, starting with the absolute classic.
Right, the classic funnel cake. It's simplicity itself. You lift it out of the oil, let it drain for just a moment on paper towels to remove excess oil, and then while it's still warm, you dust it generously with powdered sugar.
That's it.
That's it. It's simple, letting the crisp texture of the fried batter and the slight sweetness of the dough itself do the star. The powdered sugar just enhances it.
Okay, next up, a common variation. The cinnamon sugar funnel cake.
This variation relies entirely on a topping mixture that's created and applied post-fry. You just combine typically about half a cup of granulated sugar with maybe 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Mix that together well.
And apply it hot.
Yes. You sprinkle this mixture over the warm, freshly drained funnel cake immediately after it comes out of the oil. The residual heat and the slight oiliness on the surface help the cinnamon sugar adhere beautifully. It adds that warm spice note.
Makes sense. And for those who enjoy seasonal flavors, particularly in the autumn, the pumpkin spice funnel cake actually alters the batter itself.
Exactly. This isn't just a topping.
Yeah.
Here, the source specifies incorporating $1 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, that classic blend of cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, maybe some cloves or allspice, directly into the dry ingredients mix at the very beginning.
So it's baked, or rather fried, right in.
Right. This infuses the entire dough with those warm autumnal notes right from the start. It changes the fundamental flavor profile of the foundational dough itself, rather than just relying on a surface sprinkle. It's a deeper integration of flavor.
Interesting how you can tweak that base recipe. Okay, that's a really good deep dive into a quick fry batter. Now let's look at something quite different. The preparation and frying of mantou, the classic Chinese steamed bun. This involves actual dough work, yeast, and a totally different process that requires, well, patience and specific temperature control in steaming before frying.
Mantou provides a fantastic contrast, you're right. We move from a quick, chemically leavened batter to a yeast-leavened dough, which brings a whole different set of techniques and considerations. The base ratio given in our sources requires 500 grams of all-purpose flour,
Okay.
balanced with 20 grams of sugar, not just for sweetness, but also food for the yeast. 5 grams of active dry yeast, 1 teaspoon of oil for dough texture, and 260 grams of water, likely lukewarm to activate the yeast.
Right, the standard players for a basic yeast dough. Now the dough work seems key here.
It is. You mix these ingredients together and then knead the dough until a smooth, pliable consistency forms. Standard kneading technique, developing the gluten structure. But then there's a surprisingly short initial rest period, mentioned only 5 minutes, covered under clean wrap.
Only 5 minutes, that seems very short for a yeast dough rest. Why so brief?
That's a good question. That initial 5-minute rest isn't really for proofing or flavor development in the way we usually think of resting yeast doughs. It's primarily to relax the gluten network that was just worked during the initial kneading phase.
Ah, okay.
This brief resting period makes the dough much easier to handle for the next stage, the shaping. It ensures it won't be too elastic and snap back when you try to roll it out and manipulate it. It's purely functional at this point.
Got it. And that shaping process sounds quite rigorous and specific.
It is. It's methodical. First, you flatten the rested dough into a large rectangular sheet. Then you fold this rectangle in half. Flatten it again with a rolling pin. Then you roll this folded and flattened dough up tightly into a cylinder, like a jelly roll or Swiss roll.
Why all the folding and reflattening?
This folding and rolling process is essential for creating the internal structure of the mantou. It creates subtle layers within the dough, which, after steaming, result in that characteristic fluffy, slightly shreddable texture inside the bun. It's not just a homogeneous blob. Finally, you take this tight cylinder and cut it crosswise into 8 equal pieces. These are your individual buns.
Okay, shaping complete. After shaping, we move into what the source calls a dual phase of proofing and steaming. The cut pieces are placed in the steamer,
Right, typically on squares of parchment paper to prevent sticking.
where they must proof until they are significantly larger. That's a bit vague. Any guidance there?
It is a visual cue, common in bread making. Significantly larger usually implies roughly doubled in size, or at least noticeably puffed up and airy. You're looking for evidence that the yeast has been actively working, producing CO2 gas and inflating the dough structure. The time will vary based on ambient temperature, but you're looking for that visible size increase.
Okay, proofed and ready. Now, the steaming technique itself sounds very specific, particularly the starting temperature.
Yes, and this is crucial for achieving that characteristic, soft, fluffy mantou texture. The instruction is to start the steaming process with the steamer basket placed over cold water in the pot below.
Cold water, not boiling. That seems counterintuitive for steaming.
It does, but there's a reason. Starting with cold water ensures a slower, more gradual temperature ramp-up inside the steamer. This gentle increase in heat gives the dough pieces a final opportunity to rise slightly, what bakers call oven spring, but in this case, steamer spring.
Ah, last boost.
Exactly. It results in a more tender and voluminous final bun structure than if you were to shock the proofed dough by dropping it immediately into a preheated, boiling water environment.
Okay, so gradual heat. Once the water below actually reaches a boil, how long do they steam?
You continue steaming over boiling water for exactly 15 minutes. The timing needs to be quite precise to cook them through without making them tough.
And then another specific instruction. After turning off the heat, you must let it rest for 5 minutes before daring to lift the lid. Why the wait?
That 5-minute rest, lid firmly on, is a standard and very important technique in steaming buns, dumplings, and similar items. It prevents the dreaded collapse. If you open the lid immediately, the sudden change in temperature and pressure can cause the delicate, inflated structure of the steamed buns to deflate or shrink rapidly when exposed to the cooler ambient air.
Right, protecting the structure.
Exactly. That rest allows the internal structure of the steamed dough to stabilize and set, so they maintain their beautiful puff shape when you finally do lift the lid.
Okay, so now we have perfectly steamed, fluffy mantou, but we're not done yet. We move to the frying variations, starting with the classic fried mantou.
Right, the contrast is key here. For the classic fried variation, you take those perfectly steamed buns, maybe cooled slightly, maybe not, the source isn't explicit, and you deep fry them.
Deep fry steamed bread.
Yes, you deep fry them in vegetable oil over medium-high heat. The goal here is purely about the exterior, achieving a beautiful, crisp, golden brown crust all over. Because the bun is already cooked through from steaming, this frying process only takes about 2 to 3 minutes.
Very quick.
Very quick. The rapid high-heat frying creates this wonderful textural contrast with the soft, white, fluffy steamed interior. And they are traditionally served, according to the source, with a generous half-cup of sweetened condensed milk for dipping.
Condensed milk, interesting pairing.
It's classic. That sweet, sticky, creamy counterpoint to the savory, slightly oily, crisp fried bread is iconic.
But doesn't the deep frying kind of counteract the delicate tenderness achieved by the steaming? Seems like you'd lose that soft texture.
That's precisely the deliberate tension and the appeal of the dish. You achieve the maximum potential softness and fluffiness through the careful steaming process. Then you intentionally add a completely different layer of texture crispness, a slight chewiness, richness through the frying. The contrast between that golden, slightly crunchy crust and the pillowy white interior when you bite into it. That is the point of this preparation. It's about experiencing both textures simultaneously.
Okay, I get it. It's about the contrast. Now, we also have a modern adaptation using the air fryer, which is great for people looking to minimize oil consumption.
Right, the air fryer offers a way to get a similar crisp effect with much less fat, but it requires a specific pre-treatment. You must brush a thin layer of oil onto the steamed buns first. This helps with the browning and crisping in the air fryer's circulating hot air.
And the temperature settings vary.
Yes. The temperature setting is crucial and depends on whether you're starting with fresh or frozen buns. If you're using fresh, just steamed, and maybe cooled buns, you preheat the air fryer to $400 circumino, around 200 circ. If you're using frozen, pre-steamed mantou, which are widely available, you drop the temperature slightly to $350 per cafe, about $175 per
And the
XC.
timing differs too.
Logically, yes. You air fry the fresh buns for about 3 minutes, while the frozen ones need a bit longer, around 5 minutes, to heat through and crisp up. And importantly, for both fresh and frozen, the source specifies ensuring you flip them once, halfway through the cooking time, for even crisping on all sides.
And served, presumably.
Served, of course, with that essential side of condensed milk for dipping. The serving tradition holds.
Okay, next is a visually striking presentation. The golden and silver mantou. Sounds elegant.
It's a beautiful and traditional way to serve them, emphasizing the two distinct textures directly. You take your batch of freshly steamed mantou and simply divide them into two groups.
Simple enough?
The silver group is served exactly as is perfectly steamed, white, soft, and fluffy. The golden group is then fried, typically in oil over medium heat, similar to the classic method, but maybe with slightly less oil than deep frying, focusing on achieving that beautiful golden color.
Any technique notes for the frying part here?
Yes, the source emphasizes the need to press down on the buns slightly with a spatula while they are frying. This ensures the entire surface makes contact with the hot oil or pan, leading to even, uniform browning on all sides. You also need to turn them frequently to achieve that consistent golden hue.
And the presentation.
You present both the silver, steamed, and the golden fried pieces together on the same plate, often arranged attractively. And centrally placed, naturally, is the bowl of condensed milk for dipping either type. It showcases the transformation beautifully.
I like that. Finally, there's a technique that requires even less oil, but presumably offers a slightly different texture. The pan-fried mantou.
Right? This method bridges the gap between deep frying and air frying, using just a couple of tablespoons. The source specifies 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in a skillet over medium heat.
More like a shallow fry or sauté.
Exactly. You place the steamed mantou in the lightly oiled hot skillet and fry them, turning them regularly until they are golden brown on all sides. Because the heat source is less intense and encompassing than deep frying, this process takes slightly longer. The estimate is about 5 to 7 minutes.
And the resulting texture.
The resulting texture is likely a bit softer on the crust compared to deep-fried mantou, perhaps less uniformly crisp, but it still offers a pleasant contrast to the soft interior while using minimal oil. It maintains that core tradition of textural contrast, just achieved differently. Still served with condensed milk, naturally.
4 distinct ways to enjoy mantou after steaming. That's quite the range from one base product.
It really shows the versatility and the importance of texture in these culinary traditions.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's shift our focus entirely away from sweet and doughy things to savory comfort foods. We'll start by looking at regional specialties that really showcase innovation and sometimes unexpected ingredient combinations. First stop, the Mid-Atlantic region of the U.S.
And we're talking about something very specific and locally famous, the DC steak and cheese egg roll. This sounds like a brilliant example of culinary fusion. You're taking the beloved elements of a classic Washington, D.C. style steak and cheese sandwich.
Right, which often has its own specific characteristics compared to, say, a Philly cheesesteak.
And expertly encasing all that rich, indulgent filling inside a crispy, portable, Chinese-American-style egg roll wrapper. It's kind of genius.
It's more than just assembly. It really feels like a cultural collision in a delicious way. It speaks volumes about the ingenuity you find in the DMV, the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area's food scene. You see this constant innovation in casual dining, often borrowing successful, familiar forms.
Like the egg roll.
Exactly. Like the universally loved, highly portable deep-fried egg roll format, and using it to deliver a distinctly regional staple flavor profile. It makes the steak and cheese even more accessible, more snackable.
Okay, let's break down the essential layers of flavor that make up this very rich filling, because the source implies precision is key to getting it right.
Absolutely. Layer 1, the foundation, the star of the show, is the thinly sliced steak. It has to be seasoned properly, salt, pepper, maybe garlic powder, and cooked to perfection. This provides the primary protein and that deep, savory, beefy depth.
How thin are we talking for the steak?
Usually very thin, almost shaved. Think cheese steak thin. This allows it to cook quickly and integrate well with the cheese and other ingredients, rather than being chewy chunks.
Okay, layer 2.
Layer 2 involves the classic aromatic pairing, sautéed onions and bell peppers. These provide not just flavor, but also a textural contrast, a little bit of sweet crunch against the soft steak and cheese. They need to be cooked until they're tender and ideally slightly caramelized to bring out their sweetness.
Makes sense. Then comes the crucial dairy component, the cheese. And it sounds like it requires careful construction, not just throwing slices on top.
Right. The source details a two-part cheese strategy. The initial layer is described as a blend of American and provolone cheeses. These are melted directly, perhaps in the pan with the steak and vegetables after they're cooked, or maybe filled it in, creating that creamy, melty foundation that binds everything together.
American and provolone, a classic combo for steak sandwiches.
Exactly. But here's where the source emphasizes an extra step, which seems critical for the DC version. A separate, generous drizzle of a processed cheese sauce is also added to the mixture.
Like a Cheese Whiz type of thing.
Potentially, or a similar smooth liquid cheese sauce. The source stresses this is critical. It ensures maximum moisture and provides that characteristic layer of, as the source puts it, ooey gooeyness that the dish is known for. It prevents the filling from becoming disappointingly dry or just clumpy inside the wrapper after frying. It guarantees that lava-like cheese pull.
Okay, that makes sense for achieving ultimate indulgence. What else is in the filling?
We can't forget the diced mushrooms. These are cooked in with the other ingredients, adding an important earthy depth that helps ground the richness of the steak and the multiple layers of cheese.
So steak, onions, peppers, 2 kinds of cheese, plus cheese sauce, and mushrooms. That's a packed egg roll.
It absolutely is. And the final component, equally important, is the egg roll wrapper itself. It needs to be a good quality wrapper, crisp when fried, but also resilient enough to contain that heavy, savory, and very moist filling without tearing or leaking during the intense deep frying process.
Okay, let's run through the full, detailed assembly and cooking process for making these DMV egg rolls, starting with prepping the star, the steak.
Right. Step 1, prepare the steak. You take your thinly sliced steak, season it well, and cook it quickly in a hot skillet until it's just tender and cooked through. Don't overcook it. Then, importantly, set this cooked steak aside, maybe roughly chop it if needed, to maintain its quality while you prep the other components.
Step 2, sauté the vegetables.
Use the same skillet ideally to capture some of the beef flavor. Sauté your diced onions and bell peppers until they are tender and nicely caramelized to bring out their sweetness. Then remove them from the pan and set aside with the steak. You could also cook the mushrooms here, too.
Step 3 is that crucial foundational cheese melt.
Yes. The source suggests doing this separately for control. In a small saucepan, and crucially, over low heat to prevent scorching, you gently melt that blend of American and provolone cheeses. Stir constantly until the mixture is completely smooth and creamy.
Low heat is key for melting cheese smoothly.
Absolutely. High heat makes it seize up or separate. Now, step 4 is combining the entire internal structure. You take your cooked steak, the sautéed vegetables and mushrooms if cooked separately, that initial melted cheese mixture from the saucepan, and that vital extra drizzle of the processed cheese sauce. Gently combine all of these in a large bowl. You want everything well incorporated, but you still want to see distinct pieces of steak and veg, not just a homogeneous mush.
Okay, filling is ready. Then comes the assembly, which sounds like it could be delicate but necessary.
It requires a bit of care. Lay out an egg roll wrapper, usually positioned like a diamond in front of you. Place a generous portion of that rich filling horizontally across the center. Don't overfill, or it won't seal.
How much filling, roughly?
Maybe a quarter to a third of a cup, depending on the wrapper size. Enough to be substantial but manageable. You then fold the bottom corner up over the filling, then fold the 2 side corners inwards, tightly, over the filling like an envelope.
Creating the sides.
Right. Then you roll the whole package upwards tightly from the bottom towards the top corner. Just before you finish the roll, moisten the inside of that top corner edge with a little water or an egg wash. This acts as glue. Finish the roll, pressing gently to create a secure, structural seal. Repeat for all your egg rolls.
Making sure it's sealed tight is crucial for frying.
Absolutely critical. Any gaps, and the filling will leak out and oil will leak in, creating a mess. Finally, the deep fry. The sealed egg rolls must be submerged carefully, 1 or 2 at a time, into hot oil, probably around 350 to 375 degrees F, similar temps to other deep frying.
And fry time.
It's quick, since the filling is already cooked. You just need to cook the wrapper until it's beautifully golden brown and blistered and crispy. This typically takes a short time, about 2 to 4 minutes per side. Flip them once for even color.
And serving.
They must be drained immediately on paper towels or a wire rack and served piping hot for maximum crispness and gooiness. And the suggested accompaniment, according to our sources, is the DC regional favorite condiment, mambo sauce. The recipe for mambo sauce isn't provided, but its mention implies it's the traditional pairing.
A mambo sauce. It's sort of a sweet and tangy red sauce, right?
Yeah, kind of a unique DC staple. That combination sounds pretty incredible.
That is a complex assembly for an egg roll.
Okay, now we head north. We're moving from mid-Atlantic fusion to a true Canadian icon, poutine. We need to focus on the standard foundation and then dive deep into the 5 distinct, comprehensive flavor variations provided in our source material.
Poutine. It seems so simple on the surface, doesn't it? But its success relies entirely on the quality of the components and, crucially, on timing and temperature, especially regarding the gravy. The foundation is absolutely unshakable. Good French fries, fresh cheese curds, and piping hot gravy. Get one wrong, and it's just not poutine.
Let's start with the shared foundation steps, beginning with the potatoes. What kind?
The source specifies 2 pounds of russet potatoes. Russets are ideal for French fries because of their high starch and low moisture content, which leads to a fluffy interior and a crisp exterior when fried properly. They need to be cut into classic French fry shapes, not too thin, not too thick, maybe about half an inch square.
Okay, potatoes prepped. Frying technique. Again, precise temperature control is key. The vegetable oil must be heated to $350 circ FE, which is $175 circa. And crucially, the fries must be cooked in batches.
Why batches?
Overcrowding the fryer basket dramatically lowers the oil temperature. If the temperature drops too much, the fries will absorb excess oil and become greasy and limp instead of crisp. So small batches are essential for maintaining that $350 circ F temperature.
Makes sense. Fry time per batch.
About 4 to 5 minutes per batch, until they are perfectly golden brown and crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. They must be drained, immediately shake off excess oil, and then season generously with salt while they're still hot.
Okay, perfect fries ready. Now, the final shared assembly step. This sounds critical for the magic to happen.
It absolutely is. Timing is everything here. You place the hot, freshly fried French fries on the serving plate or bowl. Immediately, you top them generously with 1 cup of fresh cheese curds.
Freshness matters for the curds.
Absolutely. Fresh cheese curds have that characteristic squeak when you bite into them. They should be at room temperature, not cold from the fridge, so they soften slightly but don't completely melt into soup. And then the final crucial step. Immediately pour 2 cups of hot gravy over the top of the fries and curds.
Emphasizing hot gravy.
Piping hot.
Yeah.
The heat of the gravy is precisely what warms the room temperature cheese curds, causing them to soften slightly, become a little dewy, maybe melt just at the edges, but still retain their shape and texture. That interplay between the hot gravy, the warm curds, and the crisp fries is the essence of poutine. Cold gravy is a disaster.
Got it. Hot gravy, fresh curds, crisp fries. Now for the 5 ingredient variations provided, which totally redefine the dish.
They really do. Each one builds on that foundation but takes it in a completely different direction.
First, the bedrock. The classic poutine.
The classic relies entirely on a robust, savory beef gravy poured over the fries and curds. Simple, traditional, perfect.
Then we have the indulgent pulled pork poutine.
This variation demands that same beef gravy foundation, but then you add a generous topping of 1 cup of rich, tender, pre-cooked pulled pork. And for extra layer of flavor, a final drizzle of barbecue sauce over the pork. It's very rich.
Next, adding some heat. The buffalo chicken poutine.
This one brings spice and tang. It still uses the beef gravy as a base, interestingly, but then adds 1 cup of shredded cooked chicken that has been tossed in sauce. On top of that goes $40 cup of classic buffalo sauce, like Frank's Red Hot based sauce, and it's finished with a sprinkle of tangy blue cheese crumbles to complement the buffalo flavor.
Okay, a meatless option. The vegetarian poutine.
For this, you need to swap the gravy base entirely. Instead of beef gravy, you use a rich mushroom gravy. And to enhance the earthy flavor, it incorporates $12 2 cup of sautéed mushrooms directly as a topping over the fries and curds, along with the mushroom gravy.
Makes sense. And finally, perhaps the most decadent, the breakfast poutine.
This sounds like an ultimate indulgence. It utilizes a rich, thick sausage gravy, like American breakfast gravy, as the liquid base instead of beef or mushroom gravy. And then it's topped with 2 freshly fried eggs, runny yolks likely preferred, and a final garnish of chopped fresh chives.
Wow.
That's a whole meal in itself. Now, you mentioned the quality of components is key. The integrity of this entire section, especially for listeners wanting to try these, really hinges on the toppings. Since these are meant to be instructional guides, we absolutely must detail the execution of each required topping gravy and protein, starting with that foundational beef gravy used in 3 variations.
Agreed. Let's break down the beef gravy first. The ingredients listed are $14 cup butter, $14 cup all-purpose flour, 2 cups beef broth, 1 teaspoon beef bouillon granules, and $14 teaspoon black pepper. Standard gravy components.
Okay, talk us through the technique. It starts with a roux, right? That's the crucial thickening step. Indeed. The beef gravy technique begins by melting the 14-taller cup of butter in a medium saucepan over medium heat. Once melted, you stir in the 14-taller cup of all-purpose flour. This combination of fat and flour is the roux, the essential thickening agent for classic gravies and sauces.
How long do you cook the roux?
You must cook the roux, stirring constantly for about 1 to 2 minutes. You're looking for it to lose its raw flour smell and maybe achieve a very light brown color. This step is vital. It cooks out the raw flour taste and develops a slightly nutty flavor. Don't burn it, though.
Okay, roux is ready, then the liquid.
Then you gradually whisk in the liquids. Slowly pour in the 2 cups of beef broth while whisking continuously. This gradual addition and constant whisking are key to preventing lumps. Once the broth is incorporated, whisk in the 1 teaspoon of beef bouillon granules for a more concentrated savory beef flavor and the 14-taller teaspoon of black pepper.
And then it just simmer.
You bring the mixture up to a boil, whisking occasionally. As soon as it boils, reduce the heat to low and let it simmer gently. The simmering allows the gravy to thicken to the desired consistency. This usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes. Taste and adjust seasoning if needed. This needs to be kept hot until ready to pour over the poutine.
Perfect. That gravy is the core of the classic pulled pork and buffalo chicken versions. Next, let's detail the pulled pork preparation. The source implies this is less about quick technique and more about commitment and time.
That's an understatement. This is a major cooking project in itself. You start with a substantial piece of meat, 1 7-pound pork shoulder, also known as a Boston butt. This cut is ideal for slow cooking because it has enough fat and connective tissue to become incredibly tender.
And the dry rub sounds extensive.
It is. The dry rub listed is designed to provide a deep, complex crust that really benefits from that long, slow cooking time. It includes a mix of spices, 1 tablespoon each of cumin, garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, and paprika, plus 1 teaspoon of cayenne for heat, and significantly 1 cup of brown sugar for sweetness and crust formation, and a hefty $12 2 cup of salt, along with 1 tablespoon of black pepper.
Wow. Half a cup of salt and a cup of brown sugar on a 7-pound roast. That seems like a lot.
It does sound like a lot, but for a large piece of meat undergoing a long cook and considering some will render off, it's likely designed for deep flavor penetration and creating that signature bark on the outside. The purpose of this rub, especially the large amounts of salt and sugar, is dual. Firstly, to intensely flavor the meat surface, and secondly, the salt acts almost like a short cure on the exterior.
How do you apply it?
You mix all those dry rub ingredients together thoroughly. Then you rub this mixture generously all over the pork shoulder, making sure to get it into all the crevices. After rubbing, the source says to let the pork sit, presumably refrigerated, for a minimum of 1 hour or ideally longer, even overnight, to allow the salt and spices to begin penetrating the meat surface.
Okay, rubbed and rested. Now, the cooking process itself, slow and low, right?
Very slow and low. You preheat your oven to a moderate $300 circ FI, which is 150 circ Seago. You place the rubbed pork shoulder in a large roasting pan. Then, add 2 quarts, that's 8 cups, of cold water to the bottom of the pan, along with 2 bay leaves. This water creates steam, maintaining a moist cooking environment and preventing the pork from drying out over the long cook.
And cover it?
Yes, cover the roasting pan tightly with aluminum foil. This traps the steam and helps the connective tissues break down.
And the time commitment?
It's substantial. You roast it at $300 circa FI for 6 to 8 hours. The goal is for the meat to become incredibly tender, fork tender, meaning it shreds easily with just a couple of forks. The internal temperature should be well over 200 F. Once it's perfectly tender, you remove it from the oven, let it rest a bit, then shred the meat, discarding any large chunks of fat or bone.
And finally?
Finally, you mix the shredded pork with your favorite barbecue sauce. The amount is to taste to create the finished pulled pork component required for that specific poutine variation. It's a labor of love, clearly.
Definitely. Okay, moving on to the spicy element.
Mm-hmm.
The buffalo chicken preparation for the buffalo chicken poutine.
This is much quicker than the pulled pork. We start by cooking the chicken. The source suggests using 4 large, boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Season them simply with a drizzle of olive oil, some garlic powder, salt, and pepper.
How are they cooked?
They are baked in a preheated oven at $375 circ F, which is 190 circ C there, for about 25 to 30 minutes, or until they're fully cooked through internal temperature of 165 F. Once cooked, let them rest briefly, then shred the chicken using 2 forks or a stand mixer.
Okay, shredded chicken ready. While the chicken is baking, you construct the buffalo sauce itself.
Exactly. The buffalo sauce described here is a classic American combination, balancing heat, richness, and tang. The base is 1 cup of Frank's Red Hot sauce, often considered the standard for buffalo flavor.
Oh, what goes in?
To balance the heat and add richness, you add 3 tablespoons of melted butter. For a touch of sweetness to counter the vinegar and the hot sauce, 3 tablespoons of honey are included. And for brightness and complexity, 1 tablespoon of fresh lime juice, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, and 12 teaspoons of onion powder are added.
How do you combine them?
You simply combine all these sauce ingredients, the Frank's, melted butter, honey, lime juice, garlic, and onion powder, in a small saucepan. Whisk them together and maybe warm gently just to meld the flavors, but don't boil it.
And then toss with the chicken?
Precisely. Once the chicken is cooked and shredded, you pour the prepared buffalo sauce over the warm shredded chicken and toss it thoroughly. The goal is complete saturation, ensuring every piece of chicken is generously coated in that tangy, spicy sauce before it gets layered onto the poutine.
Got it. Now, let's detail the mushroom gravy, the savory foundation for the vegetarian poutine variation.
Right. This needs to deliver deep umami flavor to compensate for the lack of meat. It starts with heating 1 tablespoon of olive oil and a significant amount of butter, 75 grams, which is over 5 tablespoons of unsalted butter in a saucepan over medium heat.
Why both oil and butter?
Often used together, the oil helps raise the smoke point of the butter slightly, preventing it from burning too quickly, while the butter provides rich flavor. Into this hot fat, you add $1 teaspoons of finely minced garlic and 400 grams, which is nearly a pound, of sliced mushrooms. Crumity or button would work well.
And the key is browning the mushrooms properly.
Absolutely crucial. You must cook the mushrooms, stirring occasionally, until they release their liquid. That liquid evaporates, and the mushrooms themselves become properly browned and slightly caramelized. This process develops their deep, savory, earthy flavor. Don't rush this step. Season with salt and pepper during this stage.
Okay, mushrooms are perfectly browned. Then the roux again.
Yes, once the mushrooms are browned, you stir in 4 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Stir it well to coat the mushrooms and absorb all the fat and any remaining mushroom liquid in the pan. You cook this mushroom flour mixture for 1 to 2 minutes, stirring constantly to cook out the raw flour taste.
And then the broth. Beef broth is listed here.
Interestingly, yes, the source recipe for the vegetarian mushroom gravy still lists 2 cups of beef broth. For a truly vegetarian version, one would obviously substitute vegetable broth here. That might be an oversight in the source, or perhaps intended for non-strict vegetarians. Assuming vegetable broth for a true vegetarian option, you gradually whisk it in, along with any additional desired seasonings, like thyme or rosemary perhaps, though not listed.
And simmer to thicken.
Exactly the same process as the beef gravy. Bring the mixture to a boil while whisking, then reduce the heat and simmer gently for 5 to 10 minutes until it achieves a thick, rich consistency. This mushroom gravy, ideally made with vegetable broth, provides the deep umami flavor needed to stand up to the fries and cheese curds in the vegetarian offering. And don't forget the extra sautéed mushrooms required as a topping too.
Good point. Finally, the base for the indulgent breakfast poutine. The rich, creamy sausage gravy.
This is classic American Southern-style sausage gravy. You start by cooking 1 pound of breakfast sausage. The source suggests hot or mild, depending on your preference, in a large skillet over medium heat. Crumble the sausage with a spoon as it cooks, ensuring it's thoroughly browned.
And crucially, don't drain the fat.
Absolutely not. That rendered sausage fat is packed with flavor and is essential for the gravy. Once the sausage is browned, you stir 33 other cup of all-purpose flour directly into the hot fat and sausage crumbles in the skillet. Stir well, allowing the fat to absorb the flour, and cook this mixture for 1 to 2 minutes to eliminate the raw flour taste.
Creating a sausage fat roux, essentially.
Precisely. Then you gradually whisk in 4 cups of whole milk. Whole milk is important for richness here. The process of gradually adding the milk while whisking continuously is key to achieving a smooth, lump-free gravy.
Seasonings?
Season it well. The source suggests 2 teaspoons of seasoned salt and a generous 2 teaspoons of freshly ground black pepper. Black pepper is really characteristic of sausage gravy.
And simmer like the others.
Yes. Bring the mixture just to a boil while whisking, then immediately reduce the heat to low and let it simmer gently for 5 to 10 minutes, stirring frequently until the gravy has thickened to a nice creamy consistency. It should thickly coat the back of a spoon. This must be served hot and immediately over the fries and curds, ready for those fried eggs and chives.
Wow. That level of detail for each topping really underscores that poutine, especially these variations, is far more than just throwing stuff on fries. The gravies and proteins are serious components.
They are the heart of each variation, absolutely. Getting them right is paramount.
Okay, that concludes our really deep dive into human-centric comfort food, driven by, tradition, technical necessity, fusion, indulgence, all of that. Now we take our final pivot, and this one's a fascinating cultural detour that somehow connects the idea of community and sustenance to a totally unique population, the beloved and numerous street cats of Istanbul.
This is perhaps the most unexpected but heartwarming segment in our source materials. We've talked about food as comfort for fishermen on the Chesapeake, for people grabbing street food, for Canadians needing warmth. But in Istanbul, that sense of community comfort extends directly and very visibly to the animal
The
population,
scale is incredible. An estimated 125,000 stray cats living in the city.
at least. And they're not seen as pests, not typically anyway. They're largely regarded as essential residents and integral, often protected, part of the city's daily rhythm and character.
And the sources say you see them everywhere, right? Not just skulking in alleys, but lounging comfortably in cafes, perched on shop displays, even wandering through the serene courtyards of historical mosques. They seem to truly have the run of the city.
They really do. And this deep integration isn't a new phenomenon. It has historical roots. The story goes that cats were originally brought to Constantinople, now Istanbul, by Ottoman sailors centuries ago.
For what reason?
Primarily, it seems, for practical reasons,
Hmm.
to control the rat population on the ships and in the port city. Rats were a huge problem, carrying disease and destroying goods. Cats were effective predators.
So they were working animals initially.
Yes, but once ashore, they were apparently welcomed, valued for their service, and many found a permanent home. Over time, this relationship evolved. They became more than just pest control. They became recognized symbols of the city's warmth, its kindness, and maybe a deep sense of community responsibility that extends beyond just humans.
And it's not just passive acceptance, it's an active civic relationship today. The sources detail how local initiatives, often informal but widespread, ensure the well-being of this huge feline population.
Exactly. Things like community-maintained feeding stations, little piles of kibble or scraps left out regularly, water bowls appearing on sidewalks, and even efforts to provide accessible veterinary care for strays. The relationship between Istanbulites and their cats is often cited as a very visible display of cultural compassion and coexistence.
It's quite unique. And fittingly, tying back to our culinary theme, our sources provided 2 unique recipes that seem to embody this shared cultural space. These are meals described as suitable for both the human residents and their feline neighbors.
Which is fascinating in itself.
Provided, and this is crucial, one very important modification is observed for the cats.
Yes, that modification being the seasoning, specifically salt. The recipes are suitable, and presumably tasty, for humans with the inclusion of optional salt for flavor. But if sharing with a cat, the portion for the cat must be completely cooled to a safe temperature and remain strictly unsalted. Salt can be harmful to cats.
Right, very important safety note there. Okay, what's the first recipe?
The first shared recipe is salmon and sweet potato mash. Simple, nutritious ingredients. 1 salmon fillet, 1 large sweet potato, a little olive oil, and that optional salt for the human serving.
Okay, and the technique sounds pretty straightforward.
Very. You start by preheating your oven to $375 circ FSC or $190 circ Sadel. Place the salmon fillet on a baking sheet, perhaps lined with parchment paper. Drizzle it lightly with olive oil, no salt yet if sharing, and bake it for about 20 minutes or until the salmon is cooked through and flakes easily.
And the sweet potato.
Simultaneously, you peel and cube the large sweet potato. Boil the cubes in water until they're very tender. This usually takes about 15 minutes. Then, drain the water thoroughly. Mash it up. Mash the cooked sweet potato well. You could add a tiny bit more olive oil if needed for texture, but keep it simple. The final construction involves gently flaking the cooked salmon into bite-sized pieces and mixing it thoroughly, but gently, with the mashed sweet potato.
And the serving instructions.
For humans, you can season your portion with salt and pepper to taste. For the feline portion, the instruction is absolute. Let cool completely before serving to your cat. Warm is okay, but not hot. And absolutely no added salt. This combination provides excellent nutrients, omega-3s from the salmon, vitamins and fiber from the sweet potato, beneficial for both species.
Okay, simple and healthy. What's the second dual-purpose meal?
The second one is chicken and spinach quinoa. Again, simple, healthy ingredients. 1 cup of quinoa, 2 cups of water or unsalted broth, 1 cup of cooked shredded chicken breast unsalted, $12 2 cup of chopped fresh spinach, a little olive oil, and again, optional salt for humans.
Quinoa needs careful prep, right?
Yes. The technique starts with rinsing the quinoa. You must rinse the 1 cup of quinoa thoroughly under cold running water using a fine mesh sieve. This removes the natural coating called saponin, which can taste bitter or soapy if not washed off.
Okay, rinsed quinoa. How to cook it.
Standard absorption method. Bring the 2 cups of water, or unsalted broth for more flavor, to a boil in a saucepan. Add the rinsed quinoa, stir once, then reduce the heat to low, cover the pot tightly, and let it simmer for about 15 minutes, or until all the liquid has been absorbed and the quinoa grains look fluffy and have popped open slightly. Let it stand covered for 5 minutes off the heat, then fluff with a fork.
Do you have a base of cooked quinoa? What about the chicken and spinach?
While the quinoa is cooking or resting, you heat a small amount of olive oil in a separate pan over medium heat. Add the pre-cooked shredded chicken breast, making sure it wasn't cooked with salt if sharing, and the $12 2-cup of chopped fresh spinach. Saute gently just until the spinach is wilted and tender, maybe a minute or two.
And combine everything.
The final step is simply mixing the fluffy, cooked quinoa with the gently sautéed chicken and spinach mixture. Stir it all together.
And again, the serving caveat.
Absolutely critical, just like the salmon dish. Season the human portion with salt and pepper as desired. For the cat's portion, let the mixture cool completely to a safe temperature. Ensure no salt was added at any stage of cooking the components intended for the cat. Then serve. Again, a balanced meal with protein, grains, and greens.
It's really quite touching, isn't it? That the sources included recipes explicitly designed for sharing between humans and these community animals. It speaks volumes about that relationship in Istanbul.
It really does. It shows how the care for these animals isn't just an abstract concept. It's structurally embedded, even into the community's food preparation habits and considerations. A truly unique cultural endpoint for our culinary journey today.
This has been a truly comprehensive journey, hasn't it? We've gone from the necessary resilience baked into a 19th century Chesapeake layer cake needed by watermen to survive long trips,
That's right. Function driving form.
to the technical precision required for global street foods like funnel cakes and mantou, where temperature and technique are everything.
Then the bold, perhaps slightly chaotic fusion energy of the Mid-Atlantic's DMV egg roll,
A real mashup.
followed by the surprisingly complex world within the 5 distinct styles of Canadian poutine, where the toppings define the experience. And finally, landing on the unique cultural heart of Istanbul, expressed through its care for street cats and even shared cuisine.
What we've extracted today, I hope, goes far beyond just reading off simple recipes. We've tried to synthesize that deep instructional knowledge, the how-to, with the technique, the history, and the cultural context behind why these dishes developed the way they did. Food is so fundamentally a reflection of history, necessity, environment, and community wherever you look in the world.
It really is. And, reflecting on it, we've seen 2 kind of distinct forms of culinary survival today, haven't we? We have the Smith Island cake, which required this incredible generational resilience and a strict adherence to a very specific tradition to survive its harsh environment and changing times. Preservation through consistency.
Exactly. And then we have dishes like poutine variations and the DMV egg roll, which seem to require adaptation, borrowing, and bold fusion, integrating new flavors or formats into existing successful forms to thrive and find their niche.
Innovation through combination.
Right. So, reflecting on this deep dive, maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Which form of culinary survival, that deep resilience based on upholding tradition, like the Smith Island cake, or that dynamic adaptation based on innovation and fusion, like the egg roll or the poutine variations, which approach do you find more essential or maybe just more resonant for your own approach to knowledge acquisition and growth? Is it better to perfect the traditional layers or to invent a whole new filling, something to mull over as you move forward?